Mitsuko, Moriarty, Annie Wilkes, Ramsay Bolton, that kid from the Giving Tree. I mean, the kid keeps going back and going back and going back. That kid is the worst. Where are your parents, dude? The dictionary definition of the word antagonist is an adversary or a person who is hostile or opposed to someone or something. Now, I always thought that an antagonist was the bad guy, right? But that dictionary definition does not include anything about good or evil, right or wrong. And come to think of it, Macduff is the antagonist in Macbeth. And surely you'd have to be a sociopath if you were on the side of the power-hungry madman and his overly ambitious wife. Apologies to all non-sociopaths who disagree with me. Now, me being an idiot, I know I need help in crafting a terrific antagonist for my first fiction novel, Atticus the Mighty. And so I've put this question on the writer's block. How do you write a great antagonist? Hi, I'm Marcus, and I'm the idiot on the writer's block. So, to scheme on how to craft a great antagonist, we tortured and questioned these experts. And this is what they gave up.
Okie doke. So the sorts of things I would expect to jump out in terms of creating an antagonist would be, firstly, I'd like that antagonist to be the most interesting person at a party. Now, if you walked into a party, they might not be the most likable or dislikable, really, but the most interesting person at the party that's maybe doing something totally bizarre that gets your attention. I think that's the number one.
Well, what you do with the antagonist, easy one. Easy. You make them blonde Russian female ex-ballet dancers with knife skills and incredible cooks.
As far as writing a great antagonist, my first tip is think about if you want to write a morally gray antagonist versus evil for the sake of evil antagonist. So again, think about what story you want to tell. Are you writing a good versus evil kind of story? In that case, your antagonist is going to be an evil villain doing evil for the sake of evil. Maybe they want to world domination or whatever. If you're aiming to write a morally gray story, which is trending right now in 2020, it might be different in the future, but right now it has been trending for a few years. Think about your antagonist's motivation.
I'm going to be really naughty with this one because I'm going to say the same thing. I think they need exactly the same thing. You know, I don't think you should treat your antagonist any differently than you would treat your protagonist, because that's why they're going to cause conflict. You know, it's the ways in which they have the same thing. And I think for me, a key thing, like in The Scholar, for instance, you know, we had this villain antagonist like Levi, who was the don of the estate and stuff, and he brought much conflict into the lives of Sean and Corey. But people always remember this one scene I wrote about him where he was thinking about, maybe I shouldn't do this to this character. Maybe I shouldn't be a bad guy to this person. And if I wasn't a bad guy to this person, maybe this person's life would turn out for the better. And that's what I was saying about empathy. That flash of empathy, even though he didn't do it, he completely said, okay, well, I will anyway. But people always came to me and said, wow, I remember that bit when Levi was thinking that he shouldn't do this thing to this guy. And they remember that because I wanted to make him a whole rounded character. So I think even if they don't physically act out that empathy, the fact that he thought about it says a lot and opens up his character, and he wasn't a cookie cutter villain in that sense. So, you know, yeah, they have to be smart, you know, yeah, they have to be nuanced and complex and stuff in the same way, I think.
With an antagonist, my number one thing is that I think it's pretty commonly used. But again, obviously that's not the case according to our last question, but is that all antagonists should think they're the protagonist. they should all think they're the good guy. And I think that's true. I think they should all be working for something and have that inner pull to do that. You know, again, the layers of the onion, they should be just as developed as your protagonist. And, you know, I think some of my favorite stories are the ones where, like Young Elites by Marie Lu, who she wrote this whole story, and you get to the end, you're just like, oh my gosh, the person we've been following is not the protagonist. Like, you had no idea. And she had no idea she was the bad guy. Like, she finds out, and one of my clients actually is writing a manuscript with a similar setup, and I'm just so stinking excited to read it. But you know, looking at it from that point of view, you know, always have a reason. Like, bad guys aren't just bad. You know, there's always a reason behind it. There's a hurt or a fire or something that is causing them to act the way they do. You know, look at Criminal Minds even. You know, it comes up with some of the most terrifying things ever. And sometimes they're just like, there's no real reason, you know, like, we'll never know the reason. But sometimes they're talking like, you know, this person, you know, was tripped on the playground when they were 6 and now they're a serial killer. And you're just like, well, okay. You know, but there's still a line there. You can come through and you see why the person's doing what they're doing. And the ones that are the most, you know, heart-wrenching and the most horrible are the ones who are like, there's one episode where it's a dad whose daughter was killed. And now the dad is like trying to find his daughter, but because he's just not, he doesn't understand that his daughter's gone. And he thinks the men that he's killing are the people who have his daughter, and they know information. And so that's like heart-wrenching. And so when you take an antagonist, you add that element to it, it creates a whole new level of antagonist for your story, and it takes your story up to that next level.
Most people deep down believe human beings are fundamentally good. Now, that's why we're also appalled when we hear about evil things or read a story in the newspaper about people doing evil to each other, because we believe that fundamentally people should be good to each other. So if you make your baddie believable, then you're going to give your reader, you've got to give your reader a clue as to why. Otherwise, they're not going to believe. So they need to think that there's something in their past or some behavior or there's some outcome they want to achieve, something in those circumstances that the character is doing for a reason. So it's actually, they need to see why the evil character is evil. They don't need to think, I would do the same in those circumstances. They don't need to say, yes, anybody would become this person. But there needs to be some inkling as to how they got to be this real bad person. And again, sometimes your protagonist might not be the bad guy. It might just be, you know, the sort of the other side of grey of your protagonist.
It's a little bit textbook, but really that antagonist has got to have an opposing goal to your protagonist. So there needs to be conflict there. So whether or not they achieve it or not, there needs to be conflict between your protagonist or your antagonist, and whether or not it's from a plot point of view, where one person is trying to take away the other one, great, or whether it's a kind of misguided love interest, you know, the whole opposites attract type thing. That's another side of things, but I think you need that level of conflict there. Otherwise, it's not a protagonist and an antagonist, it's just two characters.
The protagonist has these qualities. The antagonists do the opposite, but make them as powerful, so they work as well as his. So in a way, you've got a conflict in the book, rather than just people arguing, which is what people think conflict is, which is, you know, it's not, despite what you see on EastEnders for making drama. You're building the power of the opposition is the way to do it, to your story. So that if he's doing this and the other guy's just as good, because these are good people, otherwise, you know, he's not going out to arrest somebody for stealing traffic cones, is he? So quite often, the more useful the more clever or twisted or whatever he is, the better the story's going to be. So look at your character, look at what the other character is, and kind of just do that. Look at both sides of the coin. Both sides of people. Everybody has the good side, the bad people within them, I suppose. And so he's got the angel, he's got the devil. Just look at what those qualities would be, I would say.
Oh, right. Number 3, consider when to reveal your antagonist. So most often in standalones and the first book in a series, the antagonist isn't introduced to the protagonist directly until either partway through the book or closer to the end of the story. So maybe you hear about the antagonist, the whispers, and you get that like tension and nervousness with the reader, and you're like, oh my gosh, when is this this little, spearheading all, like they're going to I can't think of words today, but when they're going to meet and fight, when is that going to happen? So allow the reader to feel the trepidation as they learn about the antagonist from a distance, and then look forward to when the protagonist finally faces them. So if you reveal the antagonist too soon or have that face-off too soon, it can remove some of the suspense leading up to the finale. And sometimes in a series, the main antagonist isn't introduced until later books in a series. Or maybe you have a smaller antagonist in book 1, a bigger antagonist in book 2, and then the big daddy in book 3. So I'd recommend not introducing the antagonist too soon.
And there you have it. The experts have given us their tips as to how to craft a great antagonist. You can check the description below to find links to their works. But what did you think? Do you agree or disagree with their recommendations? Or do you feel you can think of a better way to craft the villain of your piece and make them a very strong character to push against the protagonist? Or would you just like to give a shout out to some of your favorite villains of all time? Whatever you would like to share, put them in the comments to this video. I would love to read them. And don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe to this channel to get more great tips on how to write and publish your first fiction novel. I'm Marcus Acko, and I will see you next time. Too much?